So for today, we have our lovely vice chair, Cindy, sharing for us. So that's going to be very exciting.
So good evening, everyone. Thanks for attending. I would like to, this meeting is called to order at 6:06 p.m. online via Zoom on Thursday, August 26th, 2021. We acknowledge that our offices are on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. As for regrets, although we haven't received any official ones, it looks like Director May is not here. So as a result, can I get a motion on the table to adopt the agenda? Motion by Director Vale, seconded by
just a point of wait. I'm going to amend the motion to move the board governance documentation discussion, or sorry, move the board secretary hiring discussion till after the board orientation week involvement discussion. I think because it's my understanding the president has to leave around 7, and I just think having both those two kind of back to back is will save time because there's some overlap. So
okay, so can I get a motion on the table to follow through with that request? And
I just made the motion.
Or okay,
my motion was to adopt the agenda as amended with reflecting that amendment.
motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Symington. Would you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? Director Vale?
Nope.
Sorry?
No, I don't have any comments.
Yeah, I believe we're
going to a vote.
Yes.
Okay, I approve.
Director Bothwell?
I approve.
Director Shandok?
I approve.
Director Del Giudice?
I approve.
Director Symington?
I approve.
Director McCarthy?
I approve.
Chair Dang?
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, conflict of interest. Do we have any conflicts of interest to declare? As I see none, can I get a motion on the table to adopt the agenda as presented? Motion by Director Vale.
I'm gonna make my motion to pull. I'm gonna pull EL 2D7 and EL 2F2, and then we'll deal with them right after this, leaving everything else in.
Seconded by Chair Dang. Would you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? Going to a vote. Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Symington,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
and Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. On to approval of the consent agenda. Director Vale.
I thought we just did that.
Yeah, so which specific consent is
So the two items that we were basically just didn't approve was EL 2D7 and EL 2F2, and I'm going to move to table them on the basis that the Appendix G is just, it's not readable. So if the president could provide a readable version of the evidence for maybe the next meeting, and we could deal with it then.
I'm okay
Sorry,
with that.
Director Vale, would you like to speak to what the issues is with the appendixes there?
Yeah, it's just it's blurry to the point we can't read it. The evidence that's the president is providing.
So
What page?
It's
This would be in Appendix
pages
G is one of
44 through
Yeah,
47.
the operating agreement stuff.
I mean, some of the other stuff is kind of blurry, but you can make it out. But that's the most blurry, so I don't know what it says.
That's pretty bad.
So going off the speakers list, I believe the president had their hand raised.
Yes, I was just wondering which parts he wanted amended, so I could just forward that in an email if that would suffice, and then approve it, I guess, next meeting. Would that be sufficient?
Sure, yeah, just table, basically just Appendix G. in
Okay.
a format that's readable. That's all. That's the only.
That is
Thank
totally okay. I will ensure to have that for you in an email by end of week.
Thank you.
So I believe that we've already approved of the remain, with the exception of the 2 sections of the Mon report. I think we've approved everything else. I think we're all good here. So definitely, I think we can get that sorted out for the next meeting.
Director Vale?
And you'll just need a seconder for the table motion though, and then
I
Everyone-
believe we already did that in the previous one, approving it while tabling.
no, you have 2 separate motions, I thought. So I don't believe I had put that in the.
No, I thought you did when you said you tabled the 2 ones and you said you would speak to it about it afterwards, the vote. We can always do another vote if that's sufficient.
So the motion, my understanding was that motion, I just said it to pull those from and then to deal with them after, that was all. So it would be 2 separate sort of motions.
Okay, yeah, we could,
So
we could just.
So I
we
had
could just
moved,
do that,
or I
it's
had
fine.
moved it, but you
Because
just need
the
a
original,
seconder.
because the beginning of that was approval of the consent agenda, and then you kind of stepped in there, but it's fine, we can do a separate one.
So should we get a motion to follow through with that request?
Yeah, so I had moved it, you just need a seconder, and it's, as a table of motion, it's not debatable.
Director Del Giudice, would you like to second that motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so motion by Director Vale, second by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? On to a vote. Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Symington,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes with unanimous consent. On to the second approval of the consent agenda for monitoring report GP2E. This, if you click on it on the spreadsheet, it's right underneath on page 2 of the agenda package. If you all have had a chance to look at it and you have any questions, I chaired that meeting. If there are none, we can move to a motion and a vote. Director Vale?
I thought we approved all the, I thought that was part of the consent agenda already, so I thought we already approved that.
I just wanted to do 2 separate votes for this.
Okay. 'Cause see,
So
when
you-
when I moved the motion, I thought I was moving all of it except for the 2 I had pulled, that's all.
Okay, I had wanted to do 2, but given that you had said that, you are technically correct. So if there's any discussion, then we can move on into the next item on the agenda, which would be comments from the chair of the board and CGO.
Well, thank you, Vice Chair Sneedy. Assuming there's no other questions. So I have 2 updates to give everyone. So first of all is the updates on the Edi training as a result of the recommendations from our HR consultant, Shauna Lay. So it's been recommended that my original intention was to have the training occur in August, but after some additional consultation, it's been recommended that we postpone that until after the elections. Then we can get the additional directors on board and have that and have a much more productive conversation together. And then we can move forward and hopefully not have any of the issues and be able to have a functioning board that can discuss some very difficult conversations together in the future. My second update is regarding the board secretary. So unfortunately, she has given me her notice that she will be leaving this position due to some additional opportunities in her professional and work experience that pertains to her major as well as career development. But however, she has notified that she's intending to stay until at least September to give us time to hire a new secretary, and that she will be completing all the work that had to occur during the summer months. Yes. Is there any questions?
Yeah, I just have a comment and a question. When you guys figure out when she's leaving and when the new person starts, just so I know from a payroll perspective, because there's an honorarium tied to that position. So just keep me in the loop on that so we make sure we get her paid correctly.
Absolutely. And I'm in keeping close connection with Shauna to just make sure how best to do it, so we can end the contract with a clean date. So it makes it makes it very easy to split the honorarium proportionate to that. If there's no other questions, we'll be having I believe, further discussion of that later on this meeting.
Director Vale.
Just wondering, I guess through Chair Dang, I guess in this case, just wondering if you have any updates on the committee that we struck, I believe back in, was it July or June? I want to say it was a while ago now, regarding the honorarium, that whole committee.
Unfortunately, I myself do not have any updates to provide on that one, as my main focus was the by-election, but I can promise that for the September meeting, especially once students get back on campus, we can have that and start to form a meeting schedule for the ad hoc. Does that suffice?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Before we move on to comments from the president and CEO, does anybody else have any questions for the chair and CGO? All right, moving on to comments from the president and CEO.
Hi, thank you. Just so everyone's aware, I know I've made it, I told Andrew, but I will be stepping out at 7 to participate in a town hall alongside the university. They've asked me to participate and represent the Students' Union. So that's where I'll be attending. So that's a part of my updates. The video has been somewhat completed. We're just getting rounds of editing in. So it will be available to all students come a week in the opening ceremonies. As many have noticed, there have been some updates to a week. So that has been a huge focus of our staff, which is repivoting it to fit a hybrid sort of model. We've also formulated an EDI committee with a current focus on Indigenous initiatives. I'm currently building a mission statement. So once that's formulated to a proper standard and everyone's agreed to it, we'll be probably making it more public to the broader student community. We've also been meeting with a group of student leaders from the GSA, the Senate, and the Board of Governors, kind of formulating a group of representatives under sort of our assistance as resources to them. And we're just having preliminary discussions as to how we want that to work. Then we have a first-year class attendance mental health wellness initiative, which we're working alongside the wellness office to build a formulation of resources that we can share to first-year students the first few weeks of classes, which was something that I discussed in my platform when I was running for president. And so I'm really excited to get that started. So that is pretty much all my updates, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Francesco, sorry.
Yeah, so earlier this week, I was tasked by Chair Dang to file a request for the board to be a part of Clubs Fair. I couldn't find any form online anywhere to help see where this form could be, or any dates online to see when this form was supposed to be submitted. So I emailed clubs and associations to figure out when this form was sent out, or if it was sent out. And I got a response saying that the date had passed and an email had been sent out earlier in the summer. I checked my inbox, no email was sent. So I'm just wondering, thankfully the date was extended and we had an opportunity to submit a form, but I'm just wondering about the possibility that other clubs and other associations didn't have the opportunity to see this form, because nobody I know got this info all summer. I'm just wondering what the status of that.
I don't have the exact details, as that is not necessarily my department, and I do obviously oversee it. So I can definitely get some information if that's what you're looking for. I do know that Ahad, our VP, has worked diligently with many clubs, so I'm not certain if maybe it was sent out to clubs who had already worked with the department or not. So I can ensure to get that information to you if that's something that you're curious about. But I can't really speak to it in any great detail right now.
Sure. Yeah, I don't suspect that all of the clubs, were left out of this email, but I'm just primarily concerned about other organizations such as Greek life organizations and other student union bodies, which didn't have the opportunity to fill out this form. That's my main concern.
Yeah, and I'm just taking a note to follow up with that department.
Thank you.
Chair Dang.
All right, thank you. Yeah, no, I do echo a lot of these sentiments of Director Deltrici, just making sure I think communication to clubs and associations is made crystal clear, especially with how we had the transition to the nest now. So, but I have another quick question. This is more just for the record, based on my previous experience on the board prior to all week. Usually we as a board kind of have a conversation about approvals of like any additional 10K overtures or any fundings in regards to some of the plans the president has implement on the on campus. I just want to know if we can have that type of discussion, and if not, then why? That's all.
I don't believe we have any of those expenditures under our accounts, but Phil might be able to speak more to it than myself. I'm fairly certain that we're working with the university with those expenditures. So
As of right now, all the 10K expenditures were approved with the budget whenever that was approved, feels like forever ago. And as of right now, there have not been any expenditures come up on our radar for us to kind of have additional conversation. The only one was the most recent board meeting where we discussed the president's video concept. It is incredibly likely that there will be some conversations to have based on some of the gaps that we've had with an update that I will provide on the Fncc renovation project. But we don't have those budgets yet, so we can't make a request asking for money. Then we have no idea how much things will cost. So as of right now, there are no not over 10K expenditures that we're aware of. And when those come, we are fully aware that we have to bring that to the board for approval. And when and if those things come up, we will absolutely bring those to your attention.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that.
If there are no more further questions for the president and CEO, we will move on to comments from the executive director and COO.
Surprise, that's me. Yeah, where to begin? This has been, honestly, a lot has happened since we last spoke, if I'm going to be candid. And I'm not entirely sure where to start. So I'm going to focus primarily on September. Obviously, orientation week is a bit of a moving target. We kind of had the knees taken out of us, out from underneath us last Friday, as I can never remember the actual letters for SHRM. So safety, health and emergency risk management or something like that. So those folks are the ones that work very closely with facilities asset management as well as public health. And so public health has been very stern of late in terms of what the capacities for indoor rooms will be, how they're defined for academic classes versus non-academic things. And so we've been really challenged in terms of trying to figure out how to actually execute an in-person orientation week as well as in-person events in general based on the guidelines that have been set forth by public health. We have gotten since Friday some good news from those departments with regards to some of the outdoor venues. So it does look like we still are going to be able to execute quite a few of the in-person programs for students. Obviously weather dependent because a lot of that will have to take place outside. So there have been a lot of challenges kind of literally changing almost within the hour, depending on who you talk to and what information you get. In a lot of the conversations that we have with the university, because everything's happening in real time, it's really, really difficult to get answers to questions. So I'll give you a simple example. On the Brantford campus, we've got the Laurier Brantford YMCA Hawk Dome double gymnasium. So we know what the capacity of that room is. It's 1,200. We know that when the bleachers are out, that number comes down, but we're not sure what that number is. And then because it's a public building, but also an a university building, what rules are in play in terms of percentages, et cetera. And getting SHRM, who is incredibly busy, to actually pinpoint those numbers has been excruciatingly challenging. So I'm not definitely disparaging SHRM. They're doing hard work and they're doing it literally in real time. So I definitely don't envy their position, because every department head and person that they work with on projects is probably hounding them left, right, and center. But it has been particularly difficult where orientation week is concerned. Hence the town hall that's happening in 34 minutes that PJ and Ivan and a bunch of others will be part of. But we are glad to say that we are going to be able to maintain some of our in-person programming that we've been promising since the get-go. Barring some sort of major change next week, we are expecting a government announcement in the early stages of next week, which could impact some of these things, but we won't know until that announcement comes out, likely sometime on Tuesday. With regards to September, it obviously makes things a little bit challenging where food delivery is concerned. So we met this week with our partners in food service, being the university as well as Aramark. And it looks as though the fresh food company / dining hall in Waterloo campus is set to open on the Saturday with regards to the folks that are moving in on Saturday. So some students will be moving in on Saturday. The move-in process for Waterloo is Saturday, Sunday, Monday. More will open on Sunday, and even more will be ready to go on Labor Day weekend, or Labor Day Monday, my apologies. And that includes the Terrace Food Court. We'll have most of its operations open. Unfortunately, I believe Mr. Sub will not be open out of the gates. And it's also included on, I believe, the Labor Day. If not the Labor Day, then definitely Tuesday the 7th will be Starbucks, which is wonderful news for all those Starbucks addicts. How the capacities on indoor spaces play an impact on that, unclear at this moment. But that's how food service will work outside of the Students' Union. Inside of the Students' Union, Wilf's has experienced some, we'll call it some employment challenges. First of all, there was the incident that we referred to at the last board meeting, if not the board meeting before, I'm not 100% sure. And since then, we've had 2 other senior leaders resign. Both Amanda McKinney and Andy Nielsen have submitted their resignation, and Amanda McKinney has since moved on as of 16 days ago. Her last day was the 10th of August. And Andy Nielsen, his last day is next Tuesday, August the 31st. So we're in the process of kind of refreshing the leadership team within the hospitality team. They actually started training today. Yep, today's Thursday, with the part-time staff that we do have. But it is worth noting that the part-time staff is nowhere near the volume that it needs to be to actually execute full service for the restaurant. But luckily, because of public health, we can't have a full service restaurant. So everything's sort of playing in our favor that way, to be able to take it slow. So it is still the intention of hospitality and Wilf's to be able to do special caterings, but also do the takeout model, which echoes what we did last year during the heat of the pandemic. And the goal is to hopefully be open for some sort of in-person dining on the other side of Reading Week. But that will all depend on public health first, staffing levels second, and all the rest. So we do have a new kitchen manager starting on next Monday, August the 30th. His name is Rich Hodge. We're extremely excited for him to get started. He seems really optimistic and positive about the opportunities that he presents and that Wilf's and the Students' Union presents him. So we're really excited. And the attitude amongst the managers is pretty positive, although disappointed because we've lost a few members. But in the grand scheme of things, it'll allow that hospitality team to turn the page and be able to move forward in a positive direction. As you maybe saw, I'm not sure how many people check their student accounts as frequently, but the university released an email today with regards to the vaccine mandate. There appears as though they're taking a harder line stance on it. And there will be a requirement of proof of that. I believe that will be facilitated through the SafeHawk app. but we haven't had time to fully disseminate that message just yet in terms of what the implications are for students, and especially the staff and students regarding the students' union. Those are the high level things. Oh, I guess the project. So the FNCC second floor project is coming along. I was there this afternoon and I have some questions about some of the color choices, the painting, but the paint can be painted over, so it's fine. The carpet is blue, it looks great. The lighting in there is like a million times better than it has been probably ever. The student, what I'll call the student cube offices are in the process of being reinstalled in a different formation. There will be fewer of them this year, but we still have the turret available as a study space. So there's lots of study space options within our building. Doors continue to be a problem, which is a bit of a head scratcher for me personally. I don't fully understand what's going on. But the wooden doors that specifically wooden doors, they're expected to be delivered to campus from the head contractor this afternoon. That's a soft target, I'm told, on Wednesday at some point, to be installed at some point thereafter, not entirely sure. The project itself is largely going to be released next week, which means the student affairs folks can move back into their spaces. And once we get a secure office area, we'll be able to kind of start executing what our return to office plan looks like. There are temporary solutions being put into place in terms of the doors for this office security system. So I believe it is a steel door solution, and in one instance, a plywood barrier. Full disclosure, I'm not thrilled, but it is what it is. I have to kind of roll with the punches. And then the big deal is obviously the doors for the private bathroom suites, which are going in. Because they're not so private if there are no doors. So everything hinges on the doors. I'm assured that by September 3rd, which is next Friday, everything will be hunky-dory, and then whichever governing forces from the city needs to come in and sign off on it, that'll either happen late on September 3rd or early on September 7th. But either way, we should have some form of our floor back to us in the next week or so. So excited to get students back in that space to get their reaction. I'm really curious about the pink wall. That's right, I said it, pink wall. I certainly didn't approve a pink wall, so I'm not really sure where that came from. So I definitely have some follow-up questions. And it does feel a little bit hectic, if I'm going to be honest with you. Literally feels like things change every hour on the hour. So it's been a very stressful week and a half for sure, but we'll continue to keep you guys updated as you need. And I think I've probably taken up more time than I was allotted, so I apologize, and I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Chair Dang?
Thank you for the wonderful. I'm very curious and excited to see what this pink wall you speak of looks like, you know? So
It's right outside the boardroom, man.
Especially if I get my own office back, you know? One of the perks of being in chair. But I did have a couple questions, but I'll first ask one of them and open the floor back. In terms of Wales, right? You said that with all the kind of changes there, so are they still anticipated and forecasted to be able to operate effectively enough for the forecast demand of reopening, given the not full service aspect?
So
will they encounter any issues with this whole takeout system and things like that?
We don't anticipate them. We don't anticipate there being any problems because it's something that they executed for basically 8 months during the heat of the pandemic. One of the things that they've made the executive decision on is basically reducing the menu, so it makes it a little bit more manageable. So obviously the really popular items will stay on the menu and be available for students, which will help kind of streamline the effort. So do we anticipate some hiccups? For sure, every September, there's always hiccups no matter what the circumstances are. But we believe that we have the foundation of a team in place that will handle those hiccups pretty strongly and be able to navigate them. They're also going to maintain their Monday to Friday model so that we don't burn out the resources that we do have. So it'll be reduced hours and reduced days. So it will be available to students Monday to Friday. We're trying for 12 to 8. But that will all depend on where we end up with training, because as of right now, we haven't had training in person. It's been all remote. And if anybody who's worked in hospitality, as I stared directly at Vice Chair Snitty, you kind of need to get your hands on stuff in order to be able to train properly for that type of work. So that'll be the main problem. And one of the things that we like about Rich Hodge coming onto our team is that one of the focuses that he has is actually on teaching. So we think that he'll bring a new level of patience and excellence to the kitchen, and bringing and developing student leaders in the custodial arts, if you will. Not custodial arts, that's a lie. What's the word I'm looking for? Culinary arts is the word I'm looking for. But if they want to learn how to clean up too, I'm sure we can figure that as well.
Perfect. And just another question, the similarly applies. There's no issues with the UDesk come back to full operation too, right?
So the UDesk will probably will operate on reduced hours for the first little bit, because it's been 18 months since we've kind of been functional, and the space does not allow for the social distancing the way that we understand it to be provided. So it'll be one UDesk employee at a time. They're going to start at the traditional UDesk site and operate between the hours of 9 to 4. And then the goal is that the UDesk space, which is another major headache of mine on the second floor project, that space, which is where the UDesk will eventually be, should be ready hopefully by reading week. And then we can make the transition of the UDesk up to the second floor, and then move the takeout operation to the of Wilf's to the current first floor UDesk location, if that makes any kind of sense.
Okay. Perfect. I'll let my hand slide away in case anyone else has a question.
I do have a quick question. Thank you for the update. It is sad to hear that Andy's leaving. However, just out of curiosity, are they looking for a business manager now for somebody to fill that spot?
So what we've worked with the hospitality leadership on doing is really taking a look at what the need is for the department. One of the things that we did with Andy was we've tailored that position to his skill set and his needs specifically. So we're taking kind of a higher level look at what the actual need in the department is in terms of senior leadership and skill location. So all the tasks that a guy like Andy would have been responsible for will likely be divided up amongst a couple of different ideas and solutions. But it's also entirely possible that the solution is, yes, absolutely, we need a business manager, in which case, yes, we will be hiring that right away. But we're waiting for Rich to kind of join the team so he can have input. Obviously, the kitchen manager works really closely with any kind of a business manager in terms of inventory and numbers and invoices and things of that nature. So we want to make sure that Rich has his input on that vision for the hospitality team moving forward.
Chair Day?
Is it possible, Phil, if you could speak to a point number 7 on the board report, policy research and advocacy?
Did you send in my updates from like the beginning of August, PJ? Is that what he's talking about?
The see, you must understand, I can't work a 9 to 5, so I'll be gone till November.
Sorry.
Yeah, those are lyrics from a classic Wyclef Jean album or song called "Gone Till November," and I thought I actually was surprised. I'm surprised somebody caught that. But yes, that was a bit of me having a laugh at this fact that we don't get to see Director Mueller until November 1st.
No, I was chuckling. I was waiting. I was just waiting until the end of the updates to make that. But
if anybody hasn't heard it, it's a fun song. By all means, check it out.
Oh, if only Ian was here to see this, the amount of attention you're giving him. You know? His ego doesn't need to be that boosted now, does it?
He's actually, I think, on a trip with his family, and he's completely disconnected. I'm part of a chat group and a Twitter group, and he is hard radio silent. Hard.
Perfect. No, that's perfect. Yes. And before we move on, I just want one last thing, just a quick question, just for records. So under the financial administration, the SU received advance of the advance of 300K and another advance of the 700. Could you just explain approximately when is the SU going to receive it, and where specifically the funding is coming from? So that'll be you, Chris.
So that comes from the business office of the university. Obviously, they collect all our fees. So they've basically given us an advance because traditionally we're in a a very tight financial cash flow situation at this time of year. This is obviously different as of right now because of COVID. And then Chris, I'll let you take it home. When are we going to see the balance of those funds?
So I think we'll get the $700,000 payment the end of September, start of October. And then, so that will mean we'll have $1 million advance. And then when they actually figure out what the actual funding is, once they know who's dropped out and who's paid, then we'll get a little bit of balance sometime in November, maybe an extra 150,000, something like that. But it's typically a $300,000 payment in August, another 700 in September and October, and then the balance in November.
Okay, no, perfect. Thank you so much for that. Just want to explain it on the record.
Any further questions? We are now going to move on into the September by-election discussion regarding the board's role. So I will pass this along to Chair Dang.
Okay, thank you, guys. I know that this has been many months in, in the culmination, and I'm very excited to kind of, present this and, get additional 3 directors back and, move forward into a really strong year with students coming back on campus. So there's a couple of things that have to be done. So based on the discussion we had, to implement the upcoming special election or by-election, the first thing the board needs to do is to approve of the elections policy. So that has been included in the agenda package. Then we have to determine a number of things, such as like working with ICT, determining how much budget we need to set out for candidates, marketing, and specifically also setting out a proper time schedule for when this election should occur. So I placed what the general meeting of the students in January of 2021 as the example. And after some conversation late today, I've determined what I think is appropriate date. Originally, my plan was to have the election end at the end of September, but since homecoming is on the weekend of the 25th and 26th, it was deemed probably more proper to have it end before then. So then as to not have people distracted in case as things change, something could happen. And we want to make sure that everyone is on board. So yes, Bill.
I just have a quick question. Like, is there, based on the governing documents, is there not a requirement of a minimum number of days between the calling of the election and the execution of the election?
No, that absolutely, yeah, there is. So my idea is that after this meeting, we call the election as early as we possibly can to try and drum up, well, buy us some time to build some marketing, work with Megan and PJ, an all week, right? I'm aware that there's also so yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, so I just saw it, it just says 15 days, which is totally manageable of a special general meeting.
Yeah, so it's just trying to basically, I'm trying to work around because I know we have the general election for Canada, so some students might get a little bit distracted by that. We also have a week, so I'm trying to figure out what's the best plan. So because we want to attract first-year students, but I'm very cognizant that they're not even thinking about the students when they come here in the first day. Yeah, PJ.
Sorry, I'm just thinking voter turnout. Is there a certain amount of student representation needed in that as well? Just from a marketing standpoint, like we need to also ensure that we get that.
Yeah, there's quorum.
Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
I think we need 10% of the students. That's required. So that's another important thing. The first issue is just trying to figure out how we can get the candidates. So I'm thinking we open a nomination period. We have a little bit longer to like at least like let the ideas settle in for some of the returning students, right? And then we use a week as a way to kind of like drum up support and interest from first-year students too as well, coming straight out of high school, and hopefully you can get some really ambitious go-getters there.
When you do, sorry.
No, you had your hand up.
When you do the call out, do you have to then have a date set? Because I think setting a date would be very important to like analyze
Yes.
with Megan in the marketing department. So
That's the thing. So like my idea is that right now we are on the 26th. Move-in day is next week. So I'm thinking if we start on, let's say, move-in day, right? Then that gives us at least, you know, a good week, or even like, you know, week and a half if, let's say, we made the nomination packages due on like the 13th of September, and then basically have one entire you know, sorry, 2 entire weeks of elections, and then finish on the 24th. And worst case scenario, if that plan doesn't make sense and we do need more time to fulfill the 50-day requirement, we can push it in to have it at the end of this month. So have the voting days being Tuesday 28th, 29th, and then Thursday as the 30th. Yes, Phil.
Sorry, I don't actually have the ability to raise my hand the way everybody else does for some reason. Either that or I don't know how, which is entirely possible because I am old. At any rate, so for the special election, you don't necessarily need 3 days. You don't have to treat it exactly the same as we would the elections in January. So you don't necessarily need 3 days. You don't need 2 days. You obviously need at least 1 day. I think that should be something that can be discussed. I think that in order to recruit folks, because don't forget there's an age minimum required, right? So how many of the incoming first year students actually meet that age requirement will be unclear. So I think if you give yourself a little bit of time into the first full week of classes to recruit. So you said the 13th, which I believe is the first Monday of the first full week of classes as the deadline for application. Yeah, that's the one. If you maybe push that out a couple of days, so instead of 13, maybe 15, something to that effect.
My idea was that we would set the date, and then there's always, because this is usually what always happens, especially at the beginning of term.
Yep.
People get really excited, then they have this on their list, to-do list, they forget about it, and then they start having those quick emails like, oh my goodness, I missed the deadline, and then I'll be like, oh, don't worry, we're gonna push it, or whatever, right? We could do that, or we could just have
do you want to start with like your election date? So whether that's a single or plural is up to you guys, and then just work your way backwards.
Okay, so I guess the vice chair here can open up the floor to like what people feel like it. Like, do we want to have it on the 24th, or do you want to have it on the 30th?
Dr. Bothwell?
Don't we need to give students like time to decide if they want to do the board and to get like nominations, and B, like they'll need to campaign. So if I remember correctly, like we had like what, 2 weeks to camp? I actually don't remember, but we had a while to campaign, and I know we need to get this done, but I think it has to be, if we have to basically like announce an election right away.
Yeah, so I mean, the idea is that once we know, I was thinking I could work with Megan, and also I've enlisted, you know, starting to get the kind of like the inklings of the social media committee to kind of work on some board, you know, advertisements for this, and just kind of like let people know about it first. And then really a week is more reliant on just trying to like, you know, get the first year students, or even like on the other students who are just kind of back on campus for like the first time, right? And then in terms of your specific question of like the length of it, I think because this is just a special election, it'll be a lot shorter. So there wouldn't be like the 2 or 3 you know, debates. It'll probably be maybe just one, and it'll probably have to also be like a virtual type of event too as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Director Vale?
Just I guess, and I think the executive director's comments, if everyone is kind of, we should kind of work backwards in a sense. And I guess the one thing is I don't think we need 3 full days of election, but what I'm wondering and what I don't know is because we have to work within that sort of 10% of the membership has to essentially vote in order for like have quorum. Do we know what like the distribution roughly from like the last election, like this past one, 2021, like of the 3 days, like did a majority of students vote on that first day or second? Do we kind of know how that sort of spread worked?
I can speak to that. So on the first 2 days, there was not quorum and a potential risk of calling an emergency meeting to discuss, the execution of options after that occurred. But on the third day, there was a big push by a lot of the volunteers, CRO, as well as directors to get that. And we managed to surpass the 10%. And I believe that it was about 12.3%. But I can send you the exact documentation, but but it's on that last day that there was a pretty sizable push to get at least more than 1/3 of what the total number of students who voted occurred that day.
Right. Now, I guess where I'm going in this is, do we want to try and like, I don't think we need, like, we don't want to have it too many days because again, this is just a special, but at the same time we want to, so I'm wondering like, would 2 voting days be too much?
I'm thinking the reason why I was recommending 3 days is not just because it was a reflection of what we usually do, is because based on prior experience and because I'm very cognizant of how kind of quick this is and how divided student attention are. My biggest fear is not meeting quorum, right?
Yeah.
So
No,
I'm thinking
that's
giving us extra days could potentially buy us time. Yes.
Yeah.
Executive Director Champagne, want to say something?
Yeah, I just obviously one of the challenges, which I found personally strange, but whatever, that we had last year is obviously everything was remote, and this year, even for our regular election in January, we'll have the advantage of having what I will call a far more in-person opportunity to kind of get in people's faces with it. But that said, I mean, I
do have hope because we have 2 members serving here who are dons, so we can definitely get some things there. But before you do, you do have to go for the town hall at 7 too, right? Oh, okay.
No, I'm here with you guys till the end.
Okay, perfect. Because I did have a question. So in regards to, because this was one of the questions that you were kind of giving updates where week is kind of changing and there's like this some in-person stuff, right? Could we have the election also be in person, at least the voting mechanisms of like in the concourse?
So I can't give you an answer to that, but we can definitely work with the university and their departments to figure out how to have an in-person presence at a location. The difficulty with a space like the concourse is because of how it doesn't really have clear definition. So upper, lower, there's all kinds of hallways and whatever. It's harder to pinpoint what that capacity is and how to maintain this proper social distancing. So I'll give you an example of one of the things that's happening. So the bookstore is open as of, I want to say Labor Day, Monday, but you can't buy your books there. It's only for swag and tech stuff and office supplies. Because they want to be able to control the volume of people and kind of mitigate the lineup that we've historically seen on the Waterloo campus. We will obviously work with our partners and you guys very closely to figure out what that looks like. So if the concourse is an option, 100% we'll do it. If the concourse is not an option, we can also take a look and see if there are different ways to have an in-person thing. So I'll use Laz Hall as an example. I mean, there's a good opportunity because their main floor there is so wide open, right? And it's a little bit easier to kind of calculate everything.
Even the science atrium, I was wondering, are we allowed to ask the university to employ their spaces for the purposes of having multiple booths around campus?
100% we can ask, and we've definitely done that before.
Okay. That begs another question, but I'll let the vice chair take it from here first.
Thanks. When you say voting booths, do you mean like people with computers would do what they usually do? Because wouldn't that mean everybody's touching the same thing and that's kind of not COVID safe?
So science has proven that touching is not necessarily the problem with all of this, but I get your point. Not everybody has received that message and still it's dirty and gross. But I think one of the points that Director Mueller made before he left there, who was it, Director Bothwell, filling out ballots. And then the scrutineers all of a sudden have a lot more work to do on election night. So we don't necessarily have to do a full electronic voting election. We can do an all paper one. We've definitely done that in the past. We can do a hybrid. I don't want to say that the world's your oyster, but you guys definitely have a lot of options to be able to figure out how to do that.
I can speak to that on a bit because I did speak to one of the someone from the, I guess, pandemic recovery department, whatever the group is, and yeah, so COVID spread by physical touching objects is not the biggest issue. Is the respiratory thing aspect, but I think that the best course of action is to do this hybrid approach, which is to have the voting online, right, sending links to everyone as possible. And I think having a laptop would be more effective than the paper ballots, because then it just, what you can do is you can have one thing to control how to clean it. You just have a volunteer who can like just wipe down after every use.
Director Symington?
Yeah, so in the event that we didn't just send everyone links, like maybe if we did like an in-person or a hybrid thing, do you think it would be possible, because I know there's like an emphasis on getting the first years involved here, that we could put these booths or set people up inside residence lobbies so that like when first years walk into their dorms, they essentially the first thing they see on that day is like, you know, these people with their laptops and their Krispy Kreme donuts, and that'll grab their attention, and then that kind of incentivizes the involvement, and you know, they can't, at that point they can't even miss it. So is that a feasible thing? Do you think we could do that?
Sorry, was that directed at me?
Or
I guess it was kind of just a general question for whoever can answer it, because I don't know who exactly would handle that.
Well, we can definitely have a conversation with Res Life for sure. I obviously would never want to commit to anything without talking to them. And one of the reasons why I have my hand up is because we haven't even spoken to ICT if they have the capacity to actually help us with this in September, because it's definitely a unique situation. We haven't had a by-election like this. Honestly, I don't think since I was an undergrad, which is a very long time ago. So I can definitely reach out to them tomorrow. I'm going to make a note of that now and find out. And so what I would encourage this group to think about is focus more on the dates, the policies, that type of stuff, and we can kind of worry about the execution logistics later. Because this conversation could literally go on forever. Because there's lots of different theories and possibilities. And one of the things that I'm cognizant of that's not being brought up is the Brantford side of the equation, as we definitely need at least one Brantford director, and all their locations and opportunities and challenges. So I do have one question about when are you guys going to decide on the fall schedule for the board meetings?
I'm still waiting for people to send me their schedules, so expect that before September begins.
Okay, the beauty about the fall will be more frequent meetings, so we can have a little bit more fluid conversations.
Yeah, but before I continue that, I do notice that Director Vale has had them. So
Yeah,
Yes,
and actually the
being aware of
executive
time too.
yeah, the executive kind of got my point about the Brantford piece, as I was just going to mention that as well. But I think maybe the 3-day election period might not be a bad thing, because I think we want to go into this, with the goal of getting quorum at least, or if not, obviously we strive for the most, but I think it would be much more prudent than trying to scramble. So I think we need, my view is 3 days of election, but I think, and then also we need time to like kind of lead time probably for these other like ICT and these other sort of operationalize these other things. So I'm not sure, like part of me thinks, I think it's good to have it maybe before like the homecoming, but part of me wonders if that's almost too fast in terms of if like everything's going to be able to come together in that sort of time frame.
Is that directed at somebody or a general inquiry?
more of a general comment, I guess. I don't know if Chair Dang or anyone.
So could you just repeat the last part of the question again?
Really just, I think 3 election days I think would be good, but I'm
Mhm.
just wondering if having it kind of before that, the homecoming in September, if that's going to be too quick in terms of being able to operationalize these things like ICT and all these sort of other elements, if everything's going to kind of be able to fall in place in time for that.
In my personal opinion, I think having it at the end of the month would probably be better because by the looks of things, and if you want to have the booths run in different locations, which I think is a necessity right now, it's like, you know, for both Bradford and Waterloo to like have maximum outreach. I think we do need to get some volunteers too as well, and that will take some time. I'm not too sure how much we can piggyback on the resources of operations in this case, I dare ask. But I think to give ourselves, I think 3 days on the last week of September is a good thing because while people might be distracted by homecoming, sure, I think, you know, once everyone comes back, we have the Monday to kind of like just give ourselves a quick breath and then head in straight into implementation on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday. Or we can even just move it to like the end of like the first day of October too. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Great. Last comment can go to Director Del Giudice, and then we can move on.
Right. I know we talked about this in our DIC committee, Andrew and Ezra, but I think we should have a discussion on who the CRO will be for this election. Because obviously I don't think we have enough time to hire a CRO. And I just want to see like how should we go about that? Because this would be completely new territory, I assume. I don't think we've ever had to do this in this short amount of time. So is it possible for it to be one of us? I know Vice Chair Sneedy mentioned that in our DIC where it could be one of us, because while we do have the issue of being somewhat distant from the electoral process, at least it is one of us, and you know, we know how to sort of run an election. So I think we should have a short discussion on how we're going to do that.
I will, my apologies if I may step in. I think that is an absolute excellent question, but I'm gonna recommend that we table it, and then because for the sake of time, and I think the first decision we need to do is first approve of the elections policy, and then approve of the dates, and then what we can do is then we can, at the end of the meeting, we can discuss what the CRO and the elections committee will look like, the structure, and after that we can meet with that committee and then work out all the details with Phil in the upcoming days. I don't know, Phil, would you like to have a suggestion, or Director Vale?
Go ahead, Phil,
Sure.
because it looked like you had a direct response, and then Vale can have the last word.
I was just going to say, typically the CRO reviews the elections policies and makes recommendations one way or the other. So to approve the elections policies before you have a CRO, if you intend on hiring a CRO, has the potential to be a bit backwards.
And I guess in that case, then has to be the second question, which I would recommend to have at the end, which would be in the elections policy, or not elections policy, in the policy manual, it says that it can be a chief returning officer or a designate, but designate is not specified. So can that designate just be a member of the board ourselves? This would be an Ian question, I would imagine, but he's not sure. So that's the reason why.
So I think that language is in because the person who had Ian's position before Ian, Chris Hyde, actually operated as the CRO. Now he didn't actually do much of the day in, day out stuff. He was there for kind of the high level conversations. And so the ACRO and the HDRO did all of the student work, and he was just there to kind of rubber stamp and be the guy who made the calls and whatnot.
Okay, so
full disclosure, I have no idea if it can be you guys, because there's also an opportunity. I don't know what the composition of the appeals committee needs to be, and you know,
we go to the agenda package on, I believe it's page 94. So that is the general meeting and elections appeal committee. Membership shall be myself as the chief governance officer, the chief returning officer or designates. That's number two. Two members of the board who are not running, which is not an issue, and two students at large. One from each campus will be unaffiliated with any candidate or party chair. So,
Okay.
So I'm just trying to think about the sake of time and say, as you said, we can't speak with this forever, right? If the recommendation, oh, sorry, yeah.
What a thought again,
Mhm.
the choice is completely yours.
Mhm.
Maybe there's an opportunity for us to take a peek and see what what our options could be in that regard.
Mhm.
I'm not opposed to a board member being the CRO. I just want to make sure we're not tripping over our own feet and doing something we're
Mhm.
not supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
And so what I might recommend is that maybe that there's an opportunity to schedule a meeting on the first week. So like the week of the 6th, obviously not the 6th, but where we can actually just 100% start to work through some of these specific details.
Mhm.
And I can definitely work to figure out the question about, can a board member be that designate? My instinct, my gut tells me that that shouldn't be a problem. I just don't know that. And I would
Mhm.
rather know it than not, you know?
Actually, first, before I answer Director Bothwell's question, I think Director Vale has been very patient, so I would, if
He's
I
playing
should see-
Fortnite.
I know that he was playing for his LSAT and he thinks.
I was just gonna say, I think maybe I kind of agree. I think we still gotta sort of iron out some of these details. I think maybe having a meeting in the first week of like a board meeting in the first week of September and then we can kind of finalize things. I think would be good, and maybe with the ambit of maybe an early October like election as actual voting days. I think because I just think we're gonna need to figure out these things in order to sort of move along proper and using sort of the best path forward, if that makes sense.
That's a very fair point. So
Given
it
that
seems that we are a bit inconclusive in terms of what we want, but I believe that the decision of the board is to use all of September at the very least as the election period for nomination, the packages, right? Utilize like the very similar structure of like, online in terms of getting the candidates together, having a shorter, elections period itself, and then maintain the 3-day voting day. Is that correct? Okay.
if we can just get a thumbs up from those who don't have their cameras on, and then we
Yeah,
can move on to
because-
the next.
Yeah, because I was the hope that today we could have some sort of like decisive decision about things, but it doesn't seem that that's the case. So I can do is I will get Director. I'm sorry, Director Vale, I guess. Yeah, sorry.
Or maybe the executive director can go ahead if he has something to add.
All I was going to suggest is that maybe there's an opportunity then set the September meeting for the first week of September. And then Andrew, you and I, or whomever, can kind of work to prepare a brief that actually has everything outlined so we can see it in paper. We are, the recommended voting days are bang, bang, bang. The campaigning period would be this, the recruiting period would be this, the nomination packages are due here. By then I've already reached out to ICT, so I've got a meeting in the books tomorrow at 4 p.m. to find out whether the online elections is even a thing for them. I don't think it requires a ton of work on their side, but I just want to confirm. And so we'll have way more information. I'll reach out and find out a little bit more information on that CRO designate. If there is a designate, what do you do about the HDRO side of things? Because there's definitely going to need to be an HDRO on the Brantford campus. Do we even still call that the HDRO? I might be wrong on that one. Anyways, either way, there needs to be a multi-campus representation there because of the requirement of the board makeup. So I think that there's an opportunity for us to have an executive brief that we can present at the next meeting, and then that can be picked apart and kind of at least it starts off with a foundation of what it could look like, and then we can fine tune it from there.
No, I agree with that. And Before we end off this discussion, we're passing it back to Vice Chair Cindy, to Victoria, to Director Bothwell's question. To my knowledge, no CRO that has served with us prior is still at Laureate. I believe they all graduated. We have the opportunity to just hire a CRO all outright because it was the intention to hire one early. To determine like how will this upcoming election kind of like play out given all the uncertainty. So we do have the option. It will, I'm not gonna lie, it will be more work, but it could potentially knock two birds with one stone. Yeah, massive, but like generally speaking, we hire an undergraduate. I'm not too sure if it has to be an undergraduate student, but I believe that's the general practice anyways from my experience.
Well, the designate when it was Chris Hyde was certainly not an undergraduate student.
Okay, so that is a possibility there. So unfortunately, we did not have a decisive decision, but we will hopefully come back very
So
soon.
in the brief, let's just commit to having 2 or 3 options available at first CRO.
Thank you.
Okay.
Moving
perfect.
on, moving on to the board orientation week involvement discussion. Again, this is something that Chair Dan can lead off.
Okay, very quickly, because I already spoke a lot of ideas. So the application was sent on behalf of the board by Director Edi Training to have the board have a table. So once that date is confirmed, I'm hoping to have a list of availabilities from any directors who are in Waterloo, so we can come out and like actually advertise for on those that day. Yes, Executive Director Champagne.
So you're waiting for what to be confirmed exactly?
The time and like the date, like where the table is at if we do get
But
one.
you have the date, right? You know the date?
I believe I do, but
Thursday, September 9th is the
Yeah.
date.
yeah. But
And
then,
if
do we
and
still
if there's
have
any
Campus
if
Festo this year? That's the one thing I'm also kind of a bit unwary about.
so the answer is no. So Get Involved
Okay.
Fair this year for the first time on both campuses is happening on the same day.
Okay.
They've decided not to bring in as many outsiders. They want it to be student focused. So most of the groups will be student groups. So right now, sorry, I got this information literally moments ago. So Director Del Duce, I apologize for not being able to have this at my fingertips before, but we've had over 168 responses for involvement on the Get Involved Fair on Thursday, September the 9th. Over, let me get this right, over 110 of them, or 110 of them specifically, sorry, are clubs. So there's lots of student involvement. And one of the things that we've asked for university partners is, so I'll use the library as an example, rather than have it around the field the way that we've normally done it, or in RCW, courtyard, et cetera, that we've done in Brantford. We're trying to get our university partners to do their booths where they actually exist. So the library would have a booth outside the library. Athletics would have a booth outside of the athletic complex in the YMCA in Brantford, and that type of stuff, to try to get it to be more of an open house feel, but also allow people to space out a little bit better and have a little bit more control over what's being seen by students. And it also ends up being a de facto tour of campus, of whichever campus you happen to be on. That said, we're going to use some of the more public areas. So for example, in Waterloo, I can't remember what it's called, the quad, the dining hall quad, and that area, we're going to have student groups all around there. It's basically, we're going to be tripping over each other without breaking social distance protocol, if you know what I mean. We're going to be able to use as much available space as possible. There will be some groups around the field, but the focus is to try to get students around campus. And the board, if you get any static, let me know. The board has to be present at the Get Involved Fair on both campuses. We'll figure that out, I promise.
It's the main issue that I'm facing is just how to arrange transportation of directors, because I believe, with the exception of Director May, we're all Waterloo based, so it's trying to figure out how to get that on those dates there.
So I would imagine it would be a divide and conquer. So the first and most important thing is, what is everybody's class schedule on that first day of classes? because we don't want to actively program against classes because our priority is academics. And then once we know how many people are actually available and when, and how many people that aren't in Brantford can go to Brantford, then we'll figure out how to get people there. The foot van is still an opportunity for us to be able to use during the day. So worst comes to worst, I'll drive you to Brantford if we have to, and that's fine. So I don't want you to worry about those things. Those are all easy details to kind of sort out. It's all about class schedule and availability. And in the event that there is no availability of Waterloo directors to go to Brantford for the day, which may be a possibility, we'll come up with a different solution so that Director May's not steering that ship all by herself, because she also has an academic schedule, and we've got lots of staff members that can kind of help fill in the gaps and inform folks where needed.
We'll have more conversation about this, but for sake of time, I think that should suffice for everyone for updates on that.
I also appreciated the pun there, Phil, at the end. I don't know if you meant it or not.
I sure
Fill
didn't.
in.
I did.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
either way, moving on to our next item on the agenda, which is board government stock. Sorry, let me just make sure I have it right. Board secretary hiring discussion. Again, we'll start off with Chair Dang.
Oh, hey, it's me. Okay, so keeping it very brief, there's two options that we have. This is recommended by our HR consultant, Shauna Way. We can either go back to the original list of candidates that we had and choose what was the ad hoc committee's second best choice, or we can simply open up the entire application again. I believe based on some preliminary conversation, it was recommended to open up the process again. However, that will also take additional time, and based on how much we have on our plate, I'm not too sure if we are able to do that right now. But yes.
Director Symington.
I think we can all acknowledge that for the board, time is a valuable commodity at the moment. And I think we should probably at least get in contact with whoever the second candidate was, and see if he or she would be interested in the position, and then move from there.
Executive Director Champagne, was your hand raised? Oh, okay.
I'll wait.
Director Vale.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn here. I mean, we have obviously a lot in terms of on the go in terms of the board, and so there's a lot of, but in some ways I think it might not be a bad thing to put out a call as well. But maybe we could, I think maybe a good starting point just to see what interest still exists from sort of the existing applicant pool.
Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. I've been pronouncing it way for so long, not why. Oh,
You're not alone. You're not alone.
Okay, my apologies for interruptions.
Director Bothwell.
So I'm of the strong opinion that if we're opening up for 3 directors, it's like we're opening up for 3 spots, and there was only one other candidate that ran in Brantford. I think we need to just open it up for everyone to provide equal opportunity for all spots. That's my take on it.
Director Del Giudice.
Yeah, I don't think there's a harm in reaching out to the people who applied at first, but I think it's important to remember that all the people who applied were very ambitious, let's say, and they had a lot on their plate already and lots of backup plans just in case the board secretary position didn't come through. So I think we should strongly consider the option of opening up this hiring session again, just in case nobody's available. If we do that, I think we should involve Director May in this process, because Director Iqbal was one of the Brantford representatives. Unfortunately, that can't happen anymore. So if Director May is open to it, I think we should nominate her to be on this new ad hoc committee.
Executive Director Champagne.
I have some questions. So when is the board secretary done?
I believe
Is this her last meeting?
No, she said that she's willing to stay for September.
Okay, So
to give us
that's great
time.
news.
So yes, she's very
Um,
considerate about that fact.
Yep. And we also have staff members that may be able to help in the interim if that ends up being a challenge. I know that a number of years ago, we used to record the board meetings onto a mini disc with the microphones in the boardroom. I'll point those out whenever we get the opportunity to be back in that room. And then we would kind of have a staff member transcribe those and submit those for approval. So that's theoretically an option as a solution or as an interim solution or not at all. It's again, totally your call.
Director Shando?
So in the handbook, it says if the board votes on, we don't need to get 3 more people, right? Like if any point people resign and the board votes on that, we don't need to get more people.
Oh, I believe we're talking about the board secretary, not the elections.
But even with the election, right?
But it's the best governance practice to have a full board, especially given the circumstances of how these directors left.
But in theory, we can function without them, right? Even if we follow all the guidelines, we won't be breaking
theory,
anything.
Yes, but semantics and like as an organization, like, you know, our duty is to represent the voice of the students. So how can we do that effectively if we're missing, you know, 1/4? Wait, no, yeah, 1/4 of our board is.
No, I think less than that,
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Aren't you in accounting?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my brain is fried. I had a safe talk thing earlier today, so I'm very, yeah, 1/4 of our board. That's 3. That's 3 directors there. So yeah, so although in theory we can function, I believe it's the best practice to go through all this effort.
If there are not any further discussions to be had on this, we can move on to.
But before we do, so what is the general consensus? Do you want a hiring panel again or not?
Can I would you guys mind if I throw out a motion, and if
there you go, perfect.
Okay, so I'd like to put a motion on the table to reach out to those individuals who we deem qualified, who already applied, and contingent on their decline of the position, we open up the hiring again for that position.
May I just ask quickly, are we reaching out in order of I guess, placement? So for example,
Yeah,
if candidate,
that would make the most sense, right?
so if candidate X was second, we would reach out to them first, and
Yeah.
then candidate Y, Z.
Yeah. Contingent on the fact that we actually like deemed them qualified initially. I know if my memory serves me correctly, there was a little bit of a gap between the first 2 candidates and the last 2 candidates. But I could be wrong there.
Director Bothwell, are you seconding this motion?
No, I just had a question. I was wondering how many people there were, but Director Symington just said there was 4, so that answered my question.
So if Director Symington, can you just restate your motion and we can go from there?
I'd like to put a motion on the table to reach out to those individuals we feel are qualified for a position that had already applied, and contingent on them declining the position, we open up the hiring process again.
Motion by Director Symington, seconded by Chair Dang. Would you like to speak to your motion?
This is, as aforementioned, in order of their in order of the ranked process.
Yes.
Any further discussion on the matter? Director Bothwell?
Yeah, okay, so you're just saying that there was like you deemed only the first 2 candidates as the most qualified. So like, are we going to reach out to all 4? Or are we just going to reach out to the second place person?
Director Symington or Director Dang?
We'll reach out this.
My idea was that we reach out to the like, let's call them number two, for lack of a better term first, And if they were to respond, like if they were to decline, if they were busy for whatever reason, then we move on to 3. And then 4, if maybe there could be like a brief discussion or an email that goes out to review the resume again, just to see if everyone's comfortable with, that person being qualified. And then if those 4 fall, if everything there falls through, then we would open up hiring again.
Okay, sounds good.
Any further discussion on the matter? Moving to a vote, Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Symington.
Do I abstain here?
Nope.
Oh, I approve.
Director McCarthy. Director McCarthy. Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes 6-0 to 1. Moving on to our board governance documentation discussion, Director Vale.
Yeah, so I thought I was originally going to kind of put in this proposal, like obviously not for a while, just given the sort of the timing and the priorities of the board right now. But I thought, giving this, it might be a good chance because I think it kind of goes hand in hand. Is the one thing I've really noticed is I think we could maybe look my proposal was to maybe look at establishing kind of a brief ad hoc committee of a few, board members and the chair, and really kind of look at, in terms of our agenda and more specifically our minutes, and kind of look at what is the best practices and formats, kind of, because the one thing I do think is the minutes as a transcript aren't necessarily that useful itself in terms of the official record, and they also, in my view, could potentially pose a risk to the organization, as if due care isn't being given attention, if we're just essentially rubber stamping approving them potentially, because it is minutes, in my view, are not as a best practice, probably shouldn't be a full-on transcript. So just kind of looking at maybe what's going on in the sector and kind of come up with some recommendations maybe to the board with sort of my proposal, as well as in tandem, with the fact that it would also in turn make it more efficient for getting our minutes in a timely manner as well, rather than a transcript. I don't know if anybody on the board has questions or any other thoughts or.
I do think this could be potentially something we bring up if we follow through with the hiring process of the board secretary, given the specific nature of this request. If we want to continue having discussion about it, I am okay with it. However, given we are about to transition from one secretary to another, if this conversation can happen then, I don't see an issue with it. Chair Dang?
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely for having the committee there. The only thing I want to just say is what I've spoken with Ian in the past, and Ian explained to me that the reason why that the minutes are of this transcript nature is because it is really the big fail safe, right? In case if, let's say, records are lost or videos are lost, or if the in the past where live streaming failed and you can get access to it, the minutes kind of really act as a backup plan, to allow for anyone full transparency to see exactly what happened there. Although having the minutes shorter, or even in the style of the Wilfrid Laurier academic senate would probably be very ideal in terms of readability. That fail-safe is lost there, and so that we would have to assume that everything in terms of record keeping on the video side has to be absolutely maintained. That's just the thoughts there, but I'm very much happy to have the committee struck and have the discussion with when the board secretary is hired again.
Director Vale?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, and maybe something, the option that could be our official legal record in that we entered in the minutes of the corporate minute book, if you will, might be, we might have two sort of that and maybe a transcript that's not the minutes, or there might be, so we maybe, I think it'd be good to maybe wait till the secretary we got that piece sorted out and kind of just see what options we have from there maybe.
Executive Director Champagne had their hand up. Director Dang, Chair Dang.
And also there was the discussion that if we were to do the because I have actually brought this idea back about I think in the second term when I was on the board, right? And if we were to have the dual one, because I too also admit that the full minutes are quite a bit unreadable at times. It would require doing more work, and that is a bit of a difficult sell to a secretary. So there potentially might have to be the discussion about changing what the honorarium is, but then that is a story for another time there. Just want to put that for food for thought.
Director Vale?
And I guess, and that was kind of the one thing I forgot to mention in the secretary thing is, I think the honorarium to me, in my view, seems a bit low relative to the workload of generating the transcripts. But I mean, as and Chair Dang says, I mean, that's a sort of just the point I'm going to throw out there. I thought I'd mention, but that's sort of another conversation, I think.
So if there is no further discussion to be had, we can move on to the final Director Inspection Committee report, GP2G. Chair Dang?
Sorry, my apologies. I made a mistake on the agenda. That would be back to you, but I believe we already pretty much discussed the essence of it.
Yep. Sorry, Executive Director Champagne, do we just want to elaborate quickly, or?
An honorarium in concept is a small amount of money, recognizing that it doesn't represent the value of the work that's coming back. It's like a gift. If you raise an honorarium, which I think it's currently at, it's probably already too high. And then you need to change the nature of the compensation, which is one of the conversations that the honorarium ad hoc committee is supposed to have, because that applies to the chair of the board, the CRO, the DRO, all of the ROs, and the secretary as well. So it's about us kind of getting all of those ducks in a row. So yeah, that's what I was basically getting at. Anyways.
Thanks. So continuing with final report of direct inspection committee, GP2G, myself and Director Del Giudice, as well as Chair Dang, met on July 23rd, as well as recently, to discuss the policy. The final decision from the committee just consists of composition B to amend the specifics of who a designate is. I know we touched about this a little bit earlier in the circumstance that there is a by-election without a chief returning officer. So we will obviously work to fix that, fix that ambiguity. And then if there are any questions, feel free to ask them now. Dr. Vale?
So like my thing is maybe we kind of wait for the report that's going to kind of come back, because it sounds like that sort of briefing note might touch on some of the historical practices regarding, who the designate sort of was, and maybe as a board we kind of sort of create like a list of potential, whether it could be a member of the board, it could be a undergrad, like kind of what sort of like a list of sort of like options that might be that we could put in the policy that might be available to kind of further provide clarity.
Chair Dang?
Yeah, that's pretty much the exact nature of the recommendation, which we kind of already discussed back there. In the perfect world, you will be here to help us out. So this is the approval of the report will just set in motion the report that you just stated.
Any further discussions? Do we have to motion to confirm this, or can we move on to the?
We do need to motion to approve it.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the final report, Direct Inspection Committee GP2G? Motion by Director Shandok, seconded by Director Vale. Would you like to speak to your motions?
Nope.
Any discussion on the matter?
Nope.
I do not believe those on the committee have to abstain. Can somebody correct me if I'm wrong?
No, you're good.
Moving to a vote, Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Symington,
I approve.
Director McCarthy, Director McCarthy, Chair Dang. Apologies, I didn't see your hand up
No,
earlier.
I approve. No, sorry, that was from before.
The motion passes 6-0 to 1. Now moving on to the one of third last or fourth last, sorry, item on the agenda, committee elections, specifically the Finance Committee. Chair Dang, you may lead this off.
So if we take a look at the at page, I believe it was the in GP2G, the committee here has a membership of 3 directors, including myself. So any 3 directors here can be elected regardless of campus. And just as a brief clarification, this will be the committee's job is to assess the executive limitations 2D, 2E, 2F, which just happens to be the ones provided in the monitor report earlier in the consent agenda. So
We can now open the floor to nominations. Director Symington,
If my memory serves me correctly, I think Director Del Giudice wanted a nomination, so I'd like to nominate Director Del Giudice.
Director Del Giudice, do you stand?
I do.
Director Del Giudice, you have your hand up.
I'd like to nominate Director Vale.
Director Vale, do you stand?
I do.
Any more nominations? Director Dang? Chair Dang?
I have a quick question. Oh, it's fine. You can call me director today. I just have a very quick question. This would be the executive director champion because I don't think I've done this ever before. Can one nominate a director who's not present at the meeting?
I don't think you can because they can't stand.
Yeah, because I'm very much hoping that Director May could stand for experience and of the Brantford representation. So alas.
I mean, it just feels weird because the part of your formal process is having them stand for that nomination. And so if they're not here to actually stand, they're not technically here to not stand either. So I think it's probably dicey and probably something that we should clarify as to why she wasn't, when she clarifies why she wasn't here.
Personally, I think those who are here, if they wish to be on the committee, should get that opportunity. So Director Vale, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, maybe, and just a thought here is if there's no interest for the 3rd director spot from anyone who's currently here, maybe we could kind of have that, like, have that one remaining spot, maybe look at filling it the next meeting. If Director May was intended.
I can stand if that works.
Well, Director Del Giudice, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Is it possible to message Director May and see if she's willing to stand for this seat? No.
No.
She has not messaged me back, and I believe we kind of have to be in the meeting room. But I did hear that Director Shanduk was interested. Was that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Director Symington, you have your hand up.
I'd like to nominate Director Chando.
Director Shandok, do you stand?
I do.
Any more nominations?
Elections, guys.
As I see none, I would like to, can I get a motion on the table to acclaim Director Vale, Director Shandok, and Director Del Giudice to the Finance Committee? Motion by Director Bothwell, seconded by Chair Dang. Would you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? Moving to a vote, Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
Approve.
Director Shandok,
I refrain.
you abstain?
Yeah.
Director Del Giudice,
I abstain.
Director Symington,
I approve.
Director McCarthy. Given that Director Vale, I believe you approved, is that allowed?
No, you have to abstain.
Technically, but
No,
I'll
in
abstain.
this case, you have to abstain. I'm sorry.
Procedurally, but anyway, that's
Yeah,
I'm not going to get into it.
you abstain.
Director McCarthy, last call before I go to Director Chair Dang.
I shall abstain too as well.
Director Bothwell, we got you, right? Thank you. I believe the motion passes then just 2 to 0 to 4.
I suppose it does then.
Let me just double check that here.
Well, I believe that if I
Is that allowed?
was, or in this case, because I am.
Yes,
You can vote, Andrew, but Ezra
Yeah,
can't.
I believe I can vote for myself since I'm automatically on it and not running the election. So I can vote for approve and we'll make that 3 to 0 3.
So the motion passes 3 to 0 to 3. Congratulations to the three of y'all. I believe Chair Dang will reach out soon to fulfill you with your request of being on the committee. Moving on to our third last item on the agenda, we have transition to New Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. Director Vale.
Yeah, I just thought, and maybe, I don't know if the executive director could chime in here as well. I don't know what sort of legwork if they've been doing in the background at all, but my thinking was, so the Ontario government's been on the books, I think, for about 10 years since 2010, and then it kept, anyway, it's finally coming into fruition as of, I believe it's October 17th or 19th, it's going to be coming into force, and there's a 3-year transition period. And basically, as a part, we're Ontario under the Corporations Act, we're Part 3 corporation, so we're going to sort of be forced over to this new one, and I think there's a lot of pieces that are going to have to be unpacked, and I think probably, so what my sort of thinking was maybe looking at kind of striking an ad hoc committee and to sort of kind of start working through some of these things, figure out like a plan of, like, because this is going to be, I think, a long-term piece, right? It's some, I think the Constitution, these things are the bylaw, which of the bylaws are going to have to be probably go to referendum and stuff. It's going to be a multi-year process, I think, and probably in my view, it's probably better to start early so that we're able to achieve the compliance by the period in which we have to. So my thinking was to strike an ad hoc committee of a few directors, the chair of the board, and maybe some of the board resources such as the executive director and the director of policy, and kind of work through some of the constitutional amendments we may need to make as well. I don't know what the
Executive Director
everyone else
Champagne.
thinks.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this for a little while now. From a high level, we think that there's not actually a ton of work to do, but I think the striking of an ad hoc committee is actually really smart, so that we can kind of go through with a fine-tooth comb and kind of identify what it is that we need to kind of get us across that finish line for sure. So I would like to, I think the structure that you've just kind of recommended is a great one. Obviously, Ian will join us when he's back, but no good bastard. Anyways, I'd also like to ask if the Director of Finance and Administration, Chris Turner, could be added to that, because obviously there's some financial implications as well.
Yeah, and that was just a sort of starting point. I guess really anybody, I think from the operational side, who you think would be able to have input or would be a valuable.
Yep. Well, we can, what we can do with that ad hoc committee is kind of inform them of an operational kind of working committee that can submit to that board ad hoc committee, if that makes any sense. That way we don't have too many people around the board table, so to speak, so that we can keep that ad hoc committee working.
So would you like to strike a committee for that ad hoc meeting then?
Sure, so I'll make a motion to strike an ad hoc committee on the transition to the new Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, with the ambit to really kind of look into this, take a bit of a deeper dive, kind of, and then report back to the board on sort of, recommendations related to maybe updates that need to be made to the Constitution, as well as sort of maybe a plan if it's going to, there's a lot, it doesn't sound like there will be, and I don't think there will be, of a plan of sort of achieving this over the next sort of number of years to ensure that we're able to achieve compliance within the respective time frame. So then the composition wise, I think 3 directors plus the chair, the board, plus the executive director, director of policy, research and advocacy, and the director of finance and administration.
I would add the president to that.
And the president, yes, sorry,
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
So can you restate your motion and we can have it second
Sure.
and get a vote before the committee
So
elections?
Yeah, so a motion to strike an ad hoc committee to focus on the transition to the new Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, consisting of 3 directors of the board, the chair of the board and chief governance officer, the executive director, the Director of Finance and Administration, the Director of Policy, Research and Advocacy, and the President.
Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Moving to a vote. Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
Approve.
Director Symington,
I approve.
Director McCarthy, Chair Dang,
I approve.
the motion passes 6-0 to 1. Now opening up the floor for committee elections. As was mentioned earlier, this will be 3 directors. Director Del Giudice,
I nominate Director Bothwell.
Director Bothwell, do you stand?
Yeah. Yes, I stand.
That is noted. Thank you. Director Dang,
I nominate Director Vale.
Director Vale, do you stand?
Sure.
That is noted. Thank you.
The other nomination.
Director Vale,
I nominate, this is gonna be a bit awkward, but Vice Chair Sneedy, I guess, in your capacity as Vice Chair.
I'll defer to the chair of the executive director if I'm allowed to stand.
I believe we should be able to, just because of the semantics of.
I don't think there's an issue.
So would that mean so should I defer the vote call to the chair or continue as if I were leading
guess-
this meeting?
Brandon, you seem like a formality guy. What do you think?
I would say the chair, but
So I don't really think there is a conflict at all on any of this, but I mean, if you wanted to, you could sort of toss the chair over to Dang for the vote.
I'm enjoying this, so I'm going to keep it. We're going to move to a vote. So can I get a motion on the table to acclaim myself, Director Vale, and Director Bothwell to this ad hoc committee that has been proposed by Director Vale? Motion by Director Chair Dang, seconded by Director Shandok. Would you like to speak to your motions?
Nope.
Any discussion on the matter?
Nope.
Moving to a vote, Director Vale,
I abstain.
Director Bothwell,
I abstain.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Symington,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Chair Dang.
I approve.
The motion passes 5-0 to 2. Moving on to any new business and announcements. Director Del Giudice.
Yeah, so my fraternity is having a COD tourney, just in case you guys are interested. Reach out to me if you want to be placed on a team or if you have a team formed. The potential prize is $100 from our sponsor Bounce. It's gonna be really sick. The date is September the 10th, I believe, sometime around there. So yeah, reach out to me if you're interested.
Francesco, what frat are you in?
Sigma Chi.
There you go. Good stuff. I like that.
Can I ask a random Sigma Chi question?
Sure.
Are you guys gonna stay in that house up on Albert Street, given all the development that's around you?
Yeah, we're staying there. We're actually gonna renovate the house. Probably gonna add new addition to it and just refurbish the kitchen a bit. We've also got some garage work to do, but yeah, we're gonna stay there.
You guys are gonna be the lone wolf.
Yeah, we will be. But we love our house, so that's where we're staying.
Good house.
It is a great house.
When I lived on Albert Street and I was on Snapchat, I could always I could use the house Snapchat filter for my room.
Yeah, I love using that filter all the time.
Before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you all for your patience. And thank you for attending today's meeting. Best of luck with the start of school and enjoy the remaining days of summer. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting unless Director or Chair Dang wants to say something?
No, that was the for the motion.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Motion by Director Dang, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? Chair Dang, you have your hand up. Moving to a vote. Director Vale,
I approve.
Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Shandok,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Symington,
I approve.
Director McCarthy,
I approve.
Chair Dang.
I approve.
Motion passes with unanimous consent. This meeting is over.
Rawr,
Well
rawr.
done, Vice Chair.
Have a good
Thank you.
weekend.
Well done.
Stop recording, Andrew.
Thank you.